It's time for the Volquest Mailbag Podcast, answering your questions from the General's quarters every week, right here on Volquest.
Good Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com Mailbag Podcast, brought to you by Smoky Mountain Organics with Rob Lewis and Austin Price. I'm Brent Hubbs. Glad to have you along with us on this Thursday as we answer your questions. And again, we thank our good friends at Smoky Mountain Organics, East Tennessee's most trusted health and wellness store, focusing on natural products and organic remedies. They got 4 locations to serve you. Plus, you can shop online at SmokyMountainOrganics.com. Those 4 locations, 3 in Sevier County, Sevierville, Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, and also in Knoxville, right across from Trader Joe's. It's the mailbag edition. Plenty of questions to get to in this podcast, guys, and we'll jump right into the first question. This comes from Sam Smith, 2233. He wants to know what type of deal is Nico looking for while he's in high school. That's for you, Austin, and for you, Rob. Who is the alpha on this basketball team that gets the last shot in March?
As for deal, I don't feel comfortable talking about that because I just don't feel like that's anybody's business. You know, I mean, let everybody else. Like, this isn't the NFL. You're never going to hear about even what, like, most of these college deals that are going on, you're never going to know the specifics on. So, you know, let's put it this way. Nico's looking at, you know, a hefty deal at the high school level and then a secondary deal once he gets to the college of his destination.
And alpha male on the basketball team, it's interesting, Rob.
I wouldn't say, I mean, the alpha male is not necessarily the guy getting the last shot. I mean, I think anybody that watches this team would say that Rick Barnes is going to pull his clipboard out and try to get Santiago Vescovi an open look at 3, but that doesn't mean he's the alpha male. But that's definitely everybody on the team, on the staff would want to have the last shot.
Yeah, which is easier said than done, as Tennessee's had that opportunity, 3 times this year, and he's not been the guy who's gotten the ball because teams have taken him away. It's not by lack of design. It's just everybody on the court knows that that's where the ball wants to go to. So he has had a hard time getting him open, and we'll see what if they can get that. It's funny how teams, Rob, sort of take on that, like the baseball team, for example. I mean, they found a way to win every close game last year. And because of that, there's unbelievable expectations for them this year. And it's a good team coming back. But they just were able to make every shot or hit every ball in play when you had to, with 2 outs in the bottom of an inning. Tennessee's had that opportunity, 3 times and hasn't been able to do it. They had a chance against Texas Tech and had an open look against Alabama. A shorthanded team, and had the open look against Texas, and neither of those 3 fell. So kind of strange. Sometimes that's the way teams go. Maybe this team will get that opportunity and somebody can knock them down or knock that shot down in a game-winning situation. Speaking of basketball, next question is a hoops question. Never seen a basketball team rebound so poorly. Often there's no one on the offensive glass, and we aren't so great either on the defensive side. Josiah James seems to be our only competitive rebounder. What gives? Why does no one crash the offensive boards?
I mean, I disagree with that take. I mean, I'm not saying Tennessee's a great rebounding team by any stretch of imagination, but I certainly wouldn't say that they're the worst rebounding team I've ever seen. They won the rebounding battle last night. They out-rebounded, or we're taping this on Tuesday. On Wednesday, they out-rebounded Texas A&M on Tuesday. I mean, I'm not saying they're great, but act like they're the worst rebounding team that's ever existed. I don't agree with that. They're 5th in the SEC in rebounding margin in 8 conference games, or 9 conference games now after Tuesday night. So I just that take is not supported by the numbers. It's kind of laughable.
Yeah, I mean,
again, they're not great, but they're 5th in the SEC in rebounding margin.
Well, and you talked about this in the preseason. I mean, we all believed and all felt like this team may have a hard time rebounding the basketball. That was one of the question marks surrounding this team. They've been able to do a better job of that than I thought. Now, I will say they gave up too many offensive rebounds to Texas A&M, but overall, this is a basketball team that has rebounded the ball probably better in a lot of ways than people expected. Because I thought that would be one of their weaknesses for sure when you look at what this team was all about heading into this season.
Do you think they're a better rebounding team, Rob, at the guard position than they are maybe even in the post?
Yeah,
and
they have to
the
be.
post.
Josiah is the best rebounder on the team from the wing at 6'6". I mean, Olivier has gotten better a little bit, but I mean, Fulkerson is a below average rebounder for your 4 or 5 guy, and Urosh. I mean, Urosh is not going to get a rebound that is out of his area. I mean, if he has to move his feet and cover some ground, he's not grabbing a board. But I mean, I think they've outpunched their weight as far as rebound. I mean, again, they're not good or they're not great. I didn't think they would be good, but again, they're fifth in the SEC. So I'm not going to sit here and act like they're just terrible at it.
All right, let's go to the next question. Football from E. Schaefer 92. Out of last season's freshman football players, who do you see taking the biggest leap in year 2? This is a popular question seemingly every week in the chat and pretty common on the Mailbag podcast as well. Give me an offensive guy and a defensive guy that you think has a chance to take a pretty good step from last year's freshman year. I'll start on this one. How about that? I'm going to take – I think because of opportunities there, I'm going to take Kamal Haddon or Brandon Turnage, one of those two on defense. And then offensively, I'm going to go with Jalen Wright because I think he's going to get opportunities early. We'll see what kind of competition he gets from Justin Williams. But I think Jalen Wright's a guy who will have chances to do some different things as he grows in this offense, Austin.
But Hubbard, have you seen Justin Williams' thighs?
They're big. He's a large man.
mean,
He is a large individual. No doubt about that.
AKA VFF, just got his ears perked up. Offensively, I'm just not sure there's a huge step for him. I mean, Jalen Wright because of opportunity, but again, that's kind of going to be a kind of a hodgepodge unit in my mind. Like, a lot of guys playing. Might be Jalen Wright one week, maybe another guy the next week. I'm not sure anybody on the offensive line moves into that role that was a freshman this past year. Because just Tennessee's got most everybody back unless somebody like, William Parker comes along and takes a big leap in spring practice. I'll go with the tight end position, either be Miles Campbell. Actually, I'll just go Miles Campbell. And then defensively, I'll go Christian Charles. I mean, just because they were trying to play him more last year before he got a little banged up, and it just makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, AP, I like where your head's at with tight ends. I definitely could see Campbell.
I'm trying to figure out where your head's at because if you could only see the Zoom right now that we're on, Rob's nowhere to be found. We just hear his voice like the Wizard of Oz.
And I'm also with you on Christian Charles. I mean, it just felt like if he hadn't gotten injured last year, that he was going to be a guy that saw some time. And I'll throw Rucker in there as well.
Yeah, you just hope for that kid's sake the getting burnt to a toast in the bowl game doesn't have kind of a poor impact. I don't think it will, but you never know with kids, man. Kids are different.
Yeah, if he can't
AP,
get that
much like your prom date, AP, you got to have a short memory at corner. got to get over things fast.
Wow,
unbelievable.
That's a terrible take right there. Holy, I thought you were going to talk about Paul's jump shot at Maryville High School.
Paul Fortenberry's jump shot.
How you had to get
Paul Fortenberry averaged 3.2 points per game in those 6 a.m. games against Mark Eldridge. 3.2. I think his career high was 7.
He's the best rebounder that Lee Humphrey ever had in pregame at Maryville, though.
Wow. Such a shout out for Paul. Hey, Paul, there's your shout out, buddy. Next question comes to, can you give
By the way, just know if I ever move on to some other job and I'm no longer working, I will never call you like Paul did and ask for a shout out so people at the general's quarters will clamor.
You'll get one. You'll get one no matter what, AP.
All right, let's move on here. Can you give a breakdown of some of the preferred walk-ons that Tennessee has taken that you like? Obviously, Shannon Blair would be one that jumps to mind as he announced today that he was going to go to Tennessee. I think, Austin, the deep snapper from Memphis, just because, I mean, that ends up being a scholarship spot so many times, and that's such a vital position. I mean, I think that's one. He was headed to Memphis, and Tennessee obviously – has gotten him to come to Tennessee instead of going to Memphis. So I think that's one that is important. And it was, I mean, they get to transfer Jackson Hanna from Nebraska. They got to transfer from Central Florida at the tight end position. Clearly, Tennessee is trying to improve the talent level outside of the 85 number in terms of scholarship guys with their walk-on program. That's been a big point of emphasis the last few weeks, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. I mean, everybody's going to talk about Shannon Blair because he was once committed to Michigan State, 3-star type kid, solid offer list even before he committed to Michigan State. And a kid that honestly came here for camp. Even though everybody's saw him as a DB, all kids love the positions that get the most acclaim. And wide receiver gets most acclaim. So he camped at wide receiver, and they kept trying to get him to move to DB, and about 3 minutes before the camp ended, he was like, I'll move to DB. Well, it's too late then. And so, they didn't get a chance to really work him out at DB. But I think a guy, if he can recover, I think can have an impact, especially on special teams early. I think that he can have an impact, and then we'll see long-term if he can crack things. I mean, so much goes on to, like, does he get bored playing the role of, kind of just practice player the first couple of years and choose to move on somewhere else, or does he hang in there and kind of battle through it? I think the Turbofield kid from Catholic, anytime you can go with a specialist, I think that's good, because the more of those you can add to your team, the better, especially, with the fact that Paxton Brooks will be in his last year. By the way, for people that have asked, I expect Paxton Brooks to kick off again next year. The groin should be healthy. It should be healthy now, but it should be definitely healthy by the fall, which will allow him to kick off again. And then, I think, when you look at, the kids they got out of West Tennessee as walk-ons, they're very quality as well.
And we got the kid out of Greenbrier as well, right?
They got Derek Taylor from Greenbrier. They got the couple kids from Peabody. There's no doubt. I mean, that Tennessee improved what would be considered the bottom part of their roster. And we'll see. I mean, again, you look all over the NFL hubs, and I'm not saying these guys are going to be NFL players, so don't mistake, but, there are always guys that kind of blossom late, bloom late. I mean, how many Cooper Kupps and Devontae Adams, and I mean, even a guy like Josh Allen, I mean, he played at Wyoming, how many kids just kind of get overlooked in the recruiting process because they didn't have the avenues to go and camp. They didn't have the avenues to go and do several things, and then they just kind of have a will, to get better, and they work at it.
Yep, the most coveted receiver in the transfer portal is a case for that as well. He just did not end up at Tennessee, and Isaiah Nair, but that's a guy who was not recruited very hard coming out of high school. When do you think UT has a QB commitment in the boat for 23? I don't have a timeline. We'll see. I think they got to get some guys back on campus, and we'll see. I don't think there is a timeline. We just know quarterbacks come off the board earlier rather than later when you talk about quarterbacks in a signing class.
I was going to say 2 Tuesdays from now. I think March or April, is when I see, some movement there. Even if you don't even have a commitment there, I think at that point you've really kind of become a major player for somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I don't know that a commitment gets done then, but I think you know where you're dialed in and where your entire focus seems to be centering on, particularly out of that March period where those guys are going to be on the road seeing schools. I've heard it mentioned that Aiden Bussell is the top lineman in the state and one of the top players in the state. Do you believe he's the best in this state class, or is one of the higher rated offensive linemen better? I think Bussell's the best talent at the offensive line position in the class in the state of Tennessee.
I like Aiden Bussell a lot. I think Bryson Sanders' versatility is a good thing. And I think total upside, Trevor Duncan, because I think he's just so raw. He's long. He wants to play D-line, but he's not opposed to O-line, especially if it gets him on the field. He's mean. He's nasty. There's something about that kid that I think is really, really good. Quit listening to the rankings. Luke Brown's going to end up with a good spot to land. Okay. So this is not me poo-pooing on Luke Brown, but he's not the second best player in the class. That's not real. So he's going to end up somewhere really good, but he's not the number 2 player in the class. So quit looking at the rankings and look at who's offered and who's chasing them. And then, all that.
When is Deshaun Bishop looking to make a decision?
I don't know. He put on Snapchatter the other night or whatever that, everybody's committing. I'm going to do it tomorrow. And then I called him. He's like, I was just messing around. I was like, okay, well, we don't like the just messing around. So, I don't have to chase these things. I say summertime. It just makes the most sense. I don't think he's coming off the board before April.
All right, JT.
I'm sorry. I mean, who else is really after him hard?
Michigan State's offered him. I think Kentucky will end up after him. Purdue just offered him the other day. Louisville, Tennessee. Here's the thing about Deshaun Bishop: he doesn't go anywhere. Like when you don't go and take trips, and he plays at Carnes. So he's a bit hidden. Look at the two kids that ended up at Oklahoma State. They were kind of hidden too. Devin and Thomas Harper. So what's nuts is let's say Bishop ends up at Tennessee. Carnes will have 3 guys go Power 5 in 7 or 8 years. That's almost as much as anybody in the area.
Be interesting to see if Bishop takes some trips this summer, if he gets out a little bit more.
AP Carnes is Carnes.
All right, let's go to JT Vols 1973. Welcome to the board. He's a new member. He was happy to learn, Austin, that you're from Morristown. We might have him on as a special guest in the podcast because he might have some stories one of these days. Says he's got a lot of family up that way. Secondly, here's his question. I know football's trying to get back to some level of prominence, but it seems all the other sports are doing really well. The list is long, so I won't start mentioning them. But what do you attribute that to? And is that something that the university can benefit from, even though they are not the big money sports like football is?
Sure, winning breeds winning.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. Winning breeds winning. And Rob, I think when you look at why the non-revenue sports are doing well, I think you start first and foremost with the coaches that are running those sports. I think Tony Vitello has obviously been a really good hire. Give John Curry credit for that one because nobody knew really who Tony Vitello was when he got the job. Unless you follow, baseball really, really closely, you didn't know. He was an unproven head coach. Coach Brennan with the golf team, that was on Philip Fulmer's watch with that hire, who's obviously done a good job. The Weeklies have been here for a long time in softball, as we know. Tennis is, they just got a lot of good coaches running their programs. I think that's the biggest thing. And that was something that was talked about a year ago when you talk about all the unrest. One of the things that wasn't an unrest for Danny White when he took the job was that he didn't have to deal with all the other sports. They were on firm ground and solid footing when they got here. And as a result, I think he's kind of left them alone, Rob, and they've gone out and done their thing and they've been successful.
Yeah. I'm going to sound like a total jerk. However, I don't mean to, but how's Alabama's tennis team? How's Georgia's baseball team? That's nice to talk about when football's not getting it done.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Again, I don't mean to sound like a jerk and be
football's the front porch. That's huge. That's why Danny White's here, Austin, and that's why Josh Heupel's here, because you got to get football right. And football was not right, so they brought in a couple of people to try to fix football, and we'll see if they can get it done.
So you just said the football's the front porch. Is that what you said?
Yeah, to the school.
So are you advocating for the theme of the 2022 Volunteers to be Tracy Lawrence if the world had a front porch?
No, I'm not.
No, okay.
But thanks. I appreciate it.
Are
you want that to be your fourth quarter song there, AP?
I'll be real honest. Some of them tearjerkers they've played over the years, going from the third to the fourth. I'm for whatever can get the crowd into it. I've advocated for Glenn Jacobs to come out in his cane mask, do the whole motion that he does, and the fireworks shoot off on top of the stadium, because I think people would go bananas if the mayor walked out there with the mask on, the lights go out, orange lights everywhere, his theme music plays, place would go bananas.
You were saying, Rob, before.
I'm just to say, I feel bad. I feel bad saying that a little bit because I don't want to. The baseball stuff last spring was a ton of fun. The excitement was real, but it just, again, I think that if I don't know what Georgia's tennis team is like. I know they just won the national championship in football, and I bet their fans don't care.
No, I'm sure they don't. But I mean, I think that, Austin's right, and winning is winning. Does that mean there's suddenly going to be a packed house at the swimming center? No, but I mean,
No.
the more winning that you have, I think that the better the better your athletic department is. Now, is that the difference maker? Is suddenly those non-revenue sports going to help fix football? No, I don't think anybody's saying that. He asked the question why, and I think the question why is that that they have good coaches in those programs, and it's not
leadership.
it's not a bad thing, but it's not the difference maker in terms of getting football back or getting the more publicity or anything like that necessarily for you. All right. CD Vol wants to know, the vibe I'm getting is that the defensive backboard for the 23 class is still in flux, and staff can't decide on who to go all in on. This is the same issue they seemed to have last year. To me, it's unacceptable, and those issues should be corrected by now. Are Banks and Martinez not on the same page? Also, I personally don't see the Vols landing Nico or Vizina, who would be the next quarterback on the board.
Well, if you don't think they're landing Dante Moore, Christopher Vizina, or Nico Iamaleava, then they are likely going to have to, find somebody who kind of takes a jump between last fall and sometime this summer. Hits a growth spurt, comes in camps well, that type of thing. There's the kid in Kansas, I forget his name, but I mean he's as much of a flyer as trying to kind of go the camp route and find a diamond in the rough, so to speak. As
for the DBs, I mean, I think Willie Martinez.
I think they're on the same page. I just, and that's something I got to dive into. I mean, I know most of their board about stuff, but I don't know every nook and cranny of the board.
Yeah, and just because that board we don't have a clear picture of that board doesn't mean the board is in as much flux as it seems, or maybe as you think it is out there. Anybody from Michigan you could see leaving that Tennessee would be interested in if Harbaugh goes to Minnesota?
You mean player-wise? I mean, again, I think if Cody Jones wanted to come back, who was a midterm enrollee, I think Tennessee would absolutely take Cody Jones. I think Tennessee would absolutely take Junior Colson. Now, again, Colson's parents are yes, correct. That's right. They're Michigan people. So I have a tough time seeing him leaving. But Cody Jones, I mean, I guess you just never know. I think it depends on who they hire, Brent. I think ultimately, if they promote Josh Gaddis or there's most of that staff is back intact, then I think everybody kind of holds together. If Harbaugh ends up definitely leaving, if not, then I think that's where it really kind of gets those things into flux. If you have a bunch of turnover with the position coaches.
Rob, if you were a college head coach and you got offered an NFL head job, would you flinch? Would you would you debate it, or would you head to the NFL franchise?
I might even take a pay cut so I wouldn't have to deal with 16, 17, 18-year-old kids and their parents in recruiting.
Yeah, I
think whatever the worst job in the NFL is better than the best job in college football.
I think that where the college game is right now is really difficult in the direction it's going.
Would you take Alabama or the Jaguars?
Jaguars, not even close. Not even think about it for a second.
I'd take Alabama.
I wouldn't.
That thing you can just step in and. I mean, I think there's going to be a natural fall off a little bit, but you'd be able to keep the wheel. I mean, it'd be like Bill Guthridge. You keep the wheels on going for a little bit.
If you're at Jacksonville, there is one phone number that you have to pick up the phone and answer, and that's the owner. I bet Nick Saban's got a bunch of phone numbers he's got to pick up for.
Yeah, I think the Alabama thing is because of what Nick Saban makes it. I mean, because of what Nick Saban has made it. They're a team that obviously 10, 12 years ago, that was a different job. I think just in general, in my opinion, the college game is harder right now because of transfer portal, NIL, all of those things that you're having to deal with.
Alabama or Jacksonville, Hubs?
I'm taking with Trevor Lawrence. If you're talking about current situations, I'm taking the Jaguars.
And you're not going to be Nick Saban at Alabama.
That's right. No, you're right about that.
First-year head coach.
Yeah,
I mean, look at Derek Hunt.
You're asking
Derek Hunt still wasn't George Quarles.
Yeah, if you're asking me if I want to replace Nick Saban or Urban Meyer with the Jaguars, I'll take the Jaguars job because it's only going up.
I mean, this is a dead period in college football recruiting right now. NFL season just ended. You think college coaches are not recruiting? How many hours a day are they, on the phone trying to sweet talk a 17-year-old right now? Whereas NFL guys, or in Maui.
Unless you just love recruiting. But again, I think recruiting is changing because of everything that's going on there. All right, let's move on to Bruce Vol here.
The biggest thing is if you're replacing Urban Meyer, you just got to stay out of the frog, the bear, and the wild boar in Columbus. Done.
And don't kick your kicker. What role do you see Bryson Eason playing along the defensive line? Is he an inside guy or is he a strong side end?
I think he's grown into an inside guy.
Yeah, I think he's going to be an inside guy as well. Overall grade for Danny White in year one. Any intel regarding raises for football coaches? Best quarterback prospects? Any chance Tennessee schedules their spring game in Nashville on the same Saturday as Vanderbilt's takes place? I have no idea when Vanderbilt's is. If Tennessee's playing that game in Nashville, it will be the second weekend in April 9th, which is Masters weekend.
Yes.
Go ahead.
He's got more questions. Keep going.
I just rattled through. We've talked about the quarterback prospects. I think Nico's the most talented in terms of physical skills of Nico, Arch Manning, and Vizina. I think Nico's the most raw, talented guy. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot of polish though with him. I mean, I don't think he's just like some just chuck it deep kind of guy and can run around. I mean, he makes a lot of good throws. As far as Danny White in year one, I would go B+. I think to get an A, he's got to be a little more visible for my liking. But I think he's done a lot of really good things in year one.
For Danny White, Rob, I think the biggest thing that works for him is he's not had to meddle with other sports as we've talked about, and Josh Heupel did him a solid in year one. Made it easy for him, right?
What could you criticize him for? I mean, I don't think you can criticize him for anything. I mean, he inherited in baseball and basketball, he inherited two rock solid head coaches, and the biggest thing he had to do when he got the job, I mean, it seems like he made a good hire in football. I mean, maybe we'll feel differently in 4 years, but I mean, it seems to me like with what the pool that was out there that he brought back a pretty good hire.
I will say I would agree with Austin. I think more visibility, would not hurt him. He was probably more visible than you see. He's not done as much media stuff as I thought he would do. The ticket thing has obviously drawn some criticism. I think where Tennessee's at financially, that had to happen and had to take place. But overall, I'm with Austin. I mean, I think it's been a solid first year for Danny White, where he has probably spent more time listening and learning than he has anything else, and that's probably was what needed to take place first and foremost for Tennessee. Smoking the Bandit wants to know: is there anything to prevent top schools from bringing in top recruits as walk-ons and giving them NIL deals to offset the lack of scholarship? Seems like a way for programs with big NIL funds to widen the talent gap even further from other programs.
I don't think most of your top end guys are going to be willing to do that. Now, could you get a mid-level guy to do that? I mean, I think that's potential. But I mean, like Alabama, Nico's not going to go, yeah, I'll be a walk-on. You just pay for my school and I'll be a walk-on, because I mean, when you get like certain perks as a scholarship
you can't eat, your meals aren't taken care of. I mean, you can't eat in what is it, Smokey's Diner or whatever. I mean, not that not a huge thing. If you got a 6-figure NIL deal, you can go some, you can obviously go have supper somewhere, but you can't go eat with your offensive line without paying for it. I mean, I'm with you, AP. I think most kids would be like, nah, I don't think so.
Here's the thing, in my opinion, all the top guys like he's talking about are going to have scholarships plus NIL deals.
Yeah.
Yep.
Multiple Power 5 places. And remember this too, if you pay for your school out of your NIL deal, there's taxes on that money that you're taking from your NIL deal that you turn around and pay for school, where that's not the case when you deal with scholarship stuff. So I don't think anybody's going to do that. And you've also got to stay under the 105. So it's not like you can go out and sign 30 guys or 40 guys to NIL deals and load up this roster. I don't think that we're going to see it at that kind of level. All right, a couple things, and we're out the door here to finish it up. Who's likely to jump in the boat next, Sanders or Herring? What's the time frame on Tennessee's next decision? What can Tennessee do to push themselves ahead of Ole Miss and Kentucky for Robinson? AP?
Sanders and Herring, I think April, May-ish. Just Rodney Garner to continue to work hard on Nathan Robinson. If that's the case, then I think Tennessee will have every bit as good a chance as anybody else to land Nathan Robinson. In fact, I know I said last week that Tennessee I thought would be setting third. Having went and talked to that kid and spent some time with him on Monday after I went and saw Aiden Bussell, I'm gonna pivot on that and say Tennessee is even with the other two. Like I think they've not done enough to be even, but they're even. So Tennessee's very much in it with Nathan Robinson, but got to put the pedal in.
And he will be here, we think, the first weekend.
Yeah, March 5th.
For that junior day. Last question comes from Corn from a Jar. Rob, any change on Chandler's status as a one and done? Seems like there's some glaring areas in his game that needs improving to see viable minutes on an NBA roster. Shooting, free throws, ball handling, and traffic. Turnovers come to mind. Is it still a foregone conclusion based solely on his potential that he's heading to the NBA?
It's not a foregone conclusion to me. I mean, I don't know what Kennedy and his father are thinking, but I mean, to me, he does not look remotely like a first round lock. I mean, on potential and what he does at the NBA scouting combine, you know, maybe somebody takes him in the tail end of the first round, but I in my mind, it's the opposite of a foregone conclusion. It's a big bag of uncertainty. I mean, does he look better to you, Hubbard, than Sharif Cooper looked last year as a freshman at Auburn? I mean, he got taken 48th.
Yeah. I would have told you in November, I thought it was a foregone conclusion. But as the season has wore on, I would say no, that it's not. I think he over dribbles. I think he gets himself too deep in the paint. I'm not really sure what that alleged – was that a push-off they called on that little 15-footer that he shot and made?
I think he hooked the guy and, like, hooked him, shoved him on the hip with his left hand.
That was the best pull-up move that he's made maybe all season long at that point and knocked that shot down. He has to do more of that. Obviously not with that, you know, he can't foul there. I didn't think it was much of a foul, but I didn't see a great replay.
I mean, I think Kennedy's an NBA player, no doubt. Right. He's going to play in the NBA.
But he's got to find that 15-foot offense. And it can't just be the floater every time. I mean, he's got to continue to grow his offensive game. So we'll see where it's at. I mean, he has moments where he's really good, and then he has moments where he makes some really bad freshman mistakes that should not be making at this point in the season, which is what I think is driving Rick Barnes crazy at times. And, you know, we'll see how he continues to work through it as Tennessee gets ready to play at South Carolina this weekend.
Who we got now? Who we got, Rob? You got Tennessee or South Carolina?
I'm thinking the Vols run. I mean, they're going to run it's going to be a 5-game SEC winning streak if they get this one.
And then what about BHH? What's the latest with BHH?
I mean, I can't imagine that kid's going anywhere. I mean, you got to have something on tape. I mean, again, I think he's an NBA player at some point in time. But if I can't imagine that he's done enough to get drafted in the first round. I mean, I'd say somebody would probably take him in the second round just on potential. If he wants to take that chance, I guess he could go. But I haven't. I mean, right now, if I had to guess, I would guess he'd be back next year. And I think that would be the best thing for him. I mean,
and finally, Mac McClung. Any update there? I
do not have anything on Mac McClung.
All right, let me ask a serious basketball question as we get out the door.
I was being serious about BHH.
I know you were.
My thing is
I know you were.
Is he happy enough? You know how kids are, man. They get so like unhappy when they're not playing. They're used to being stars, and all of a sudden they're sitting the bench. How is he mentally right now? Is he going to be one that flakes out and wants to go transfer portal, not the draft?
I don't want this to sound bad. I don't think he really cares that much. I mean, I'm not saying that he doesn't want to play. I mean, he's 18 years old. I mean, I just think that it's been a lot for him to adjust and understand just how hard you have to work, how much effort you have to play with on both ends when it's just been so easy for him. And I mean, you say that about every freshman, but I mean, he's a young freshman. I mean, again, still should legit still be a senior in high school. And I just think mentally it's been hard for him to come to grips with just how much you have to put into it. I mean, he'll have a great practice one day where he will legit look like the best player on the court for 20 minutes. And then you come back 2 days later and you don't even know he's in the gym.
Yeah, it's a job. And, you know, for some, it's an easier transition to that. Zekiah Ziegler, obviously, with his mental makeup where he's at, that's an easy transition for him. For others, it's not the easiest transition. So, everybody's situation is different, and that's the hard part that you can't equate when you put stars beside their names is to figure out everybody's mentality. So we'll see what happens with that. But first for Tennessee is South Carolina on Saturday. Don't look for the Vols to score 90 points, Rob Lewis, but Tennessee's defense is going to have to be better because they can't give up 80 points on the road. Tennessee probably not going to shoot it as well, but they're going to have to defend better.
Yeah, but I don't know that South Carolina can score 80. Either.
That's true.
I said, me and Ben talked last night in the full court press. I expect every game Tennessee plays to be in the 60s. So I was stunned last night. I mean, they scored almost as much in both halves as they did the whole game at Texas. And Texas A&M is not a bad defensive team at all.
Right.
But I think Tennessee will win an ugly game on Saturday. I mean,
who they got next week, Rob?
Kentucky, Tuesday night.
And then who they got the weekend?
Vanderbilt come to town.
AP, I think.
So they go away, then home again. So if you win Saturday and then you beat Kentucky, you're probably gonna be Vanderbilt at home. You got a real chance to put yourself in a really good spot for that double bye, which is all that really matters.
I'm a week ahead at Mississippi State, midweek game, then Vandy at home.
Oh, so they have a real shot to be sitting there. I mean, you win all those games, and I mean, double bye becomes realistic at that point.
Well, I think the double bye is almost a done deal. I mean, I think it's them and Arkansas. Mississippi State could sneak in there. I mean, Alabama's 4-5. Tennessee's 3 games clear of them right now. After last night, so Mississippi State is not going to be a gimme on the road, but I think Vanderbilt is a gimme. You get South Carolina this week. You get to 8. You're at 8-3 in the league. Pretty good position.
Yep, with the bulk of all of your hard road games out of the way, your most challenging road games out of the way. Schedule lightens up for Tennessee a little bit down the stretch, particularly on the road. So we'll got full coverage of Tennessee and South Carolina on Saturday. Continued football recruiting coverage as well. We'll have some things with baseball. Lots of stuff going on at Volquest.com. That's going to do it for this edition of the Mailbag Podcast presented by Smoky Mountain Organics. For Rob Lewis and Austin Price, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Thursday, everybody.
You've been listening to the Volquest Podcast every week here on Volquest.